Hello, friends.
Hey, mamas.
Welcome to My Invisible Disease podcast. We are here to share our struggles and hacks as two moms living with chronic illness.
Tune in and join our community as we share stories and experiences while we sort through the ups and downs of living with invisible disease.
Hey, Kassy.
Hi.
All right, great to be chatting this week. We are going to be listening to your story this week of your experience through invisible disease and chronic illness. So if you'd like to elaborate for our listeners.
All right. So unlike you, my friend, this whole chronic illness thing's a little new to me. I guess to preface a little bit here, I have not taken very good care of myself over the years. I was always blessed in a sense that I had great skin. I never had issues with my weight. I literally had to put zero effort in to maintain what I felt was a pretty decent standard physically.
Great metabolism. Absolutely.
Great metabolism. I mean, I don't think that your health is reflected by your BMI, but you know, it's a good indicator whether or not you're taking care of yourself. And I was just always fine. I'm always fine. You'll hear me say often, I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I work a very busy life, so I'm a realtor, and I have 2 young kids and a husband who works out of town a huge majority of the time.
Yeah.
So to say I'm exhausted is normal. Like, that's just my life. I just run a very busy, exhausted life. But that was the norm for a long time. So this last spring, the real estate market was absolutely nuts. I was on a very fast-paced sales team that, you know, we're crushing it.
And you're a doer. Go, go, go. Absolutely.
Yeah. So we were, you know, like living our best lives. Mm-hmm. Everyone had a million balls in the air. We were going to get ready to flip a property. We had some tenants move out of one of our rental properties. And being the cheap ass that I am, I'm like, oh, I'm not paying someone all that money to paint. I can paint. Like, no, we'll save. I'll do it. I'm good. It'll take me a week. No problem.
Yeah.
So fast forward 3+ weeks and I'm still painting this goddamn place. And I am aching and exhausted and cannot figure out why. Like, I'm just tired.
And
so,
had you noticed prior to this renovating your investment property any dips in energy or nothing that really stood out past your normal day-to-day life?
Well, I would just say that for the most part, I didn't really have a good baseline.
Yeah.
Because I had 2 babies in 5
Young
years.
Kids.
You know, number one, my weight fluctuates. So, you know, just like everyone, if you have an extra 5 or you're down an extra 5, you're loving it. Mm-hmm. I never really focused on my diet too much. So, you know, you just kind of assume that you're not really taking care of yourself, or, you know, I assume I need another coffee. I assume that I'm tired because my daughter wakes up at 3:00 in the morning every single day. You know, you just assume, you just kind of forget to check in and be like, is this normal?
Yeah.
Because you don't know.
I think for a lot of moms, it really is difficult there's always an excuse.
Yeah.
Like, we can always come up with a reason due to our lifestyle and taking care of kids, and the kids are always sick, so I'm catching it every time. Or, you know, when it comes to symptoms, it can be really hard to differentiate something that is kind of normal to not normal. Yeah.
Totally. And like, being that, like I said, even like fitness wasn't really a part of my daily, like I'm not really a big athlete, not super into working out. So I didn't have a baseline to like compare anything really to. I just knew something wasn't right. Mm-hmm. So I had, you know, just like anybody, you go for your physicals and yearly checkups, this, that, and the other thing. And I had a blood work write-up that was sitting in my car for months. I never got it done. And I thought, you know what? I should go. I bet you my hormones are off because as a woman, you just blame everything on hormones. So I figured, let's just go get this like panel updated. There could be a couple extra things he wants to test if I tell him that I'm having some issues with exhaustion and whatever. Sure enough, I go and get the blood work done. So the big thing that they were looking at on this particular one was my CK level. So CK is a level that they check when it's like an enzyme that your muscles produce when they're inflamed.
Yeah. And you had mentioned before that to me that while you were doing this reno, not only were you tired, but you were getting a lot of issues with your muscles, like exhaustion, like achiness, lack of strength.
Like, totally. Yeah. So I was just very tired and sore, like everywhere. Like every day I need to come home and have a hot bath. Like that's not normal.
No.
That's not normal. People don't do that. People live great lives without baths every day.
Yes.
So he gets this information back, and just so you can kind of reference. So if I was like working out super, super hard, having a really hard day in the gym, you could expect to see a CK level from like 1 to 200 max. Like it is very rare that it would be much higher than that, even if you were like a male athlete, right? Like it's, anyways, mine was at like 2,600. 2,600. So we're a bit higher than the normal. Then he sent
like
me
off the charts.
Yeah. Extraordinary, if you will. I'm extraordinary. So he sent me to a rheumatologist. The rheumatologist appointment came a lot quicker than I expected, which was great, but also extremely unnerving. Mm-hmm. You can't help but question and wonder why the heck they're getting you in there so fast. Like, yeah, well, what is it? And at this point, you know, they're leaning towards some kind of like arthritis, which is, I mean, uncommon for a 36-year-old woman, but rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease that is common in younger people. And you know what? Maybe it could be that. So that's kind of what they were thinking. Like that's initially kind of where he led that to go. Then fast forward to, I think it was about a week before I got in there, maybe 2 weeks max. And she's doing her exam and going through everything. And she now wants to send me to a neurologist. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, what would a neurologist be looking for? Because
So is this based on the physical symptoms or your test results for the neurologist?
The test results were a big trigger for a lot of the tests because it just doesn't make sense. Like, why on earth would this little tiny human have this?
Yeah,
like
off the charts.
Yeah. So like my results basically made it look like I had been hit by a car. Like on the inside, the amount of inflammation that was in my body was comparable to somebody who had been in like a trauma situation.
Yeah.
So she sends me to the neurologist, and now I'm freaking out. Like I am running worst case scenarios in my head. I now have MS, or I now have Lou Gehrig's disease, or ALS, or any of these horrific death sentences. Like honestly, like that's how I felt. Like, oh my God, if I have one of these, like
life's over. Yeah.
Like,
which isn't necessarily true, but when you're in that position, it really just feels damning, right? Like it's scary. Yeah.
And then you get into the black hole of Googling things.
Absolutely.
So, you know, the black hole, hole.
That's the whirlpool spiral. Yeah.
Yeah. So I go to the neurologist appointment and I'm optimistic, but also terrified that it's going to be conclusive that I have one of these diseases. And it wasn't. It was inconclusive. She scheduled me another test. So, you know, we went through the standard panel. She looked over and she says, okay, I want to get you an EMG, I believe is the acronym that we were going with at that time. And basically it was like ultrasound of my muscles to see like targeted inflammation. And the whole point is that they could eventually do a biopsy of the inflammation to see what's going on.
And I found it's electromyography.
Yeah.
Google.
There you go. Yeah. So she tries to do this EMG, which consists of putting like a dozen needles into my body and then hooking them up to electro probe things and just giving her a zap.
A little Frankenstein.
A little Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun, but we couldn't dial in any specific location where it was kind of most ideal to do a biopsy. Mm-hmm. And thank goodness, because I had tickets to go to the circus after. Mm-hmm. We were planning on taking the kids. I figured they would take a quick swipe of whatever type of biopsy they want to do. Easy peasy.
Yep. In little needle eject. I mean, we have this picture in our mind of what these tests are.
Yeah.
Doesn't always reflect the true experience.
Well, and considering I'm a medical professional certified by Grey's Anatomy, I've seen every single episode. Yes. I had a pretty good understanding of what I was getting into, I thought. Not. So we're inconclusive. We're waiting for a MRI. So this is when I think, it would be really great. Summer holidays. I should pull the kids out of daycare and I'm going to have them. I have a flexible schedule. We can have the best summer ever. We'll spend our weeks at the park and we'll do this and we'll do that and we'll be hiking and we'll have the best summer ever. Because why on earth would I spend thousands of dollars on childcare when I'm home?
Yes. And hours and hours and hours now already spent going to appointments.
Yeah.
And who knew that was going to foretell the rest of your summer? Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. So geared up for the best summer ever. And my body is just declining and declining. And I'm getting more and more sore. Things are getting stressful around the house. Like I just literally can't keep up. We ended up having to get a house cleaner to come in because I just can't. Yeah. The last thing that I can do is scrub a floor. By this point, so just so you can kind of understand, like my legs were boards. Like they are so stiff, so tired, exhausted to walk up the stairs, but like bending down to do anything, like literally the bending of my legs was just not really doable, which is so weird.
It sounds pretty lighthearted, but really I saw you end of May and then we'll get there, but I saw you again end of August. And the shift that happened over those 3 months physically was shocking.
Yeah.
So, this was a very obvious change in your body. So not only were you feeling tired and stuff, but your mobility was decreasing rapidly.
Yeah, totally. So Jesse and I went to a wedding in July and it was really fun. I had a couple drinks. I don't really drink that much, but I was like, I'm going to let loose and have a good time. And you know what? Like no kids. This is going to be a great time.
The start of your great summer.
The start of my best summer ever.
Yeah.
Instead, I had a really great time at the wedding. I'm not going to lie. But that's when things became like obviously more serious for me. I swelled up a ton while I was there. And usually I didn't really have a ton of swelling or anything like that. But the flight, I had a ton of swelling, which never happens. I've flown dozens of times and I've never really had an issue with that. So that was interesting that I was like, my ankles are double the size. That's not normal. So then I just happened to have a appointment booked for the Monday when we got back from our trip with my doctor. And he put me on prednisone. So that is it was a low dose. I was on it for 10 days and it was actually very frustrating. I remember sitting in that doctor's office and telling him like, I'm so sore. I can't walk up the stairs. Like gosh, like standing up off the couch is a struggle, like to get myself physically up. Like, this isn't normal. Like, what's going on? And he's like, there's nothing I can really do for you. Like, I've given you these anti-inflammatories. They didn't do anything. And we're waiting on an MRI that we have booked for September. Like, until we know what's going on, I can't really treat you. So reluctantly, he gives me a 10-day cycle of prednisone just to get shit under control. Like, he's just like... So
prednisone is typically used to treat autoimmune symptoms. What else? What else do they use it for?
I don't really know. I know that it is kind of like a blanket prescription, though. As I continued through like our prognosis journey, it was something that I found treats a lot of autoimmune diseases.
Yeah.
So he reluctantly gives me this like 10-day cycle, and all of a sudden, like, oh, I got a little bit more pep in my step. My feet aren't aching to get out of bed or to walk, or, you know, like I'm starting to feel a little bit better. And then 10 days is over. I had a few adverse reactions to that little cycle of prednisone, which is interesting. Like some discoloration of my skin. My hands got like this weird, like coloring rash on them, but that was about it. All I knew is I felt a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, I get, it basically like comes out of my system and things start going back downhill again. So now we're getting closer to like my birthday, and I'm just, well, my birthday was on the deck. I sat on the couch the entire time eating charcuterie board and had one beverage because that's how we celebrate, I guess.
Yeah.
And I progressively started getting worse and worse, and I started noticing that I was losing weight.
Yeah.
I had probably lost like 10 to 15 pounds by the end of August, which then by September got closer to like 20 some pounds. I can't even remember how many. I think 25 pounds is like the most I lost. But oh my God, 25 pounds when you're only 150 is
I mean, I remember seeing you and being like, okay, like, did she do some kind of like rapid, this is the invisible disease portion, right? Like, I hadn't seen you, I hadn't really heard past, you know, that you had some muscle issues. Like, I didn't have a really good understanding of what you were going through to the extent, and until we met up, and like, but at first reaction, I'm like, oh, like, she looks great. Cause I mean, you know, it's not like you were like a flake at like 80 pounds or anything, but it was drastic. Like, it, you know, you're like, face had hollowed out a little bit. Totally. Like, you definitely looked underweight. And it happened so fast because I had just
I was getting messages. Like, I was getting messages on Instagram by people being like, "Oh my God, you've lost so much weight. What have you been doing?" I'm like,
suffering.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
I've been like sitting on the goddamn couch.
But that is just, it's interesting to, with invisible disease, you know, autoimmune specifically. I think in this case so far. That like what's going on behind the scenes, like how many doctor's appointments have you been to? How much time have you spent at appointments at the hospital, you know, working through these medications, and the physical side of it, when people see you out and about, because that's when you're feeling your best, you know, the reaction is just like, oh, she's lost some weight. What's she doing? And it's just an interesting kind of contrast to what the actual experience is. Right?
Yeah. And I'll also put on top of that, not only did I leave my high pressure real estate team to have the best summer ever with my kids, I'm now trying to build a business of my own individual branding. So I'm turning it on as much as I can, because the absolute last thing I want anybody to know or think is that I'm incapable of doing my job properly.
You're presenting yourself to the world as like your best version of yourself, which I'm sure was a struggle on its own.
Well, I definitely had, it was like a Jekyll and Hyde situation. Like, I would go show a house and then come home and be like, oh my God, you guys, let's watch a movie. Like, I am spent. All of my energy went into that 2-story today. Like, luckily I have amazing clients. Like the people that I was working with at the time, like one was actually a nurse, and I wasn't like, hey, like, have you ever Googled these symptoms? Do you want to talk about all my problems?
Yeah, but it's like, a relationship. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm having a hard time, like, going up and down the stairs. She's like, is that knee still bothering you? I'm like, yeah, totally. Like, yeah, it's my knee. It's all of it. It's fine. So now we're getting close to the beginning of September, and I was just getting worse. Everything was getting worse. Now it's like left my legs, and it's getting into my arms, and my arms are like you're losing the ability to brush your goddamn hair. Like I didn't have like the capacity to do that. I was having a hard time swallowing, and that was
scary,
terrifying. Like with Jesse being out of town, I'm now afraid to freaking eat, because what if I choke? Like I'm washing all my food down with water because I'm terrified I'm going to choke, and my 5-year-old is going to have to call 911 because mom is choking on her bagel. And like, no, just
so with
terrifying.
the weight loss, was that more so due to the difficulty eating, or was it just due to everything? Like it just,
I think it was, looking back, a lot of the weight loss that I had was muscle tissue.
Okay.
So a lot of it came from my muscle. Like to this day, I have negative equity in my back end. My butt is concaved. Yeah. I have no legs.
Yeah.
So we'll get there, because that's a whole other fucking can of worms about my horrendous ass. Also, I ordered booty pads off of Shein, so we'll see how those look. Stay tuned. Yeah. Stay tuned. I will be stuffing my butt before you know it. Anyways, my butt got super small. My legs got super small. My arms look like twigs. You could make me out of Play-Doh and just be like 2 big circles, aka my boobs, because those are the only things that didn't shrink, and sticking out of it.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time swallowing. Yeah. I can't eat. I can hardly stand up on my own. My 5-year-old is now helping me get off the toilet when we are places, because guess what? Things are not accessible for people that can't stand up very well.
Yeah.
So life is good. I call my doctors and I'm like, guys, like I'm getting significantly worse. What can we do? So they moved my MRI up about a week. So we didn't save a ton of time, but we did get there faster. And as we do that, a flu bug hits our family. So we actually thought it was my mother-in-law giving us food poisoning, to be honest.
Yes, because you did a big dinner, didn't you?
We had a big dinner on the Thursday. Friday, my brother-in-law was super sick. Didn't get sick until Saturday morning. My mother-in-law was sick. Brixton puked once. So I was like, oh, he got it out of his system. He's fine. Yeah. But we had plans to go visit some friends at the lake. And I just wasn't. Like, I was up all night, so sick. I was like, Jesse, take the kids to the lake. I don't want them to miss it. I want them to have a great summer, because remember, we're having the best summer ever, but we haven't actually done anything. Take the kids to the lake. They'll have a great time. I'm going to stay home and sleep. Literally slept like 26 hours. Just needed it. They come home. I'm still not doing so great. Like Jesse was just like, oh my God, like you look rough. I'm now 25 pounds lighter. I've had the flu. I haven't been able to eat for 2 days, and I need help. So Monday morning, I dropped the kids off at school because they're back in school by this point. And, like any other person does, I went to the emergency room and got myself a IV bag because I needed to be, I was like, hi, can I have some fluids, please?
Yeah.
I am not doing good.
Yeah.
So while I'm there, I have an MRI on this Sunday. My neurologist just happened to be doing some like pre-work in my file and shoots over to the ER doctor. Hello, I see that one of my clients is currently in your emergency room. Can you advise on the situation?
Yeah.
So he knows,
red flag. I mean, see, but that's it. Everyone is now seeing your red flag.
Yeah. Yeah. So he he didn't run any tests or anything like that because he knew that I was like under care. But, you know, he was like, okay, I'm just going to get her up to a point where she can leave with confidence that she's feeling a bit better. Then I got the MRI on this Sunday, and I think it was the Tuesday that I had my biopsy.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, my mom has like all of these crazy days off, and they had just been like, hey, you have to take 2 weeks off, like use your days. So I was like, oh, great. You can drive me to my biopsy. This is awesome. Yeah. So I go in for what I thought was going to be a quick poke and a send on your way.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
You'd stick that big fat needle in. You would just, withdraw a little bit of flesh, you know, on your way is what we all thought.
Yeah. So I get there, and she gives me my like surgical gown, like, oh, put this on. I'll be cutting an incision into your leg about this large. I guess you can't see this, but it was about 1.5 to 2 inches.
About the size of a thumb.
Yeah. So that was fun, especially when she told me I can only freeze the upper layer of like the skin. It burns like hell, but don't worry, that's the worst part. I'm like, okay. She's like, then I'll be going into the muscle and cutting out 3 pieces, the size of the top of your finger, without freezing.
Oh my God. See,
no freezing.
I think the benefit of you not knowing what you were walking into was a blessing in disguise, because the anxiety that would have built up over the weekend, knowing, because we were talking over that weekend and like anticipating this biopsy. We're all concerned what's going on. You've progressed significantly. Doctors are all involved. As friends, we're kind of like, we want this to be a conclusive diagnosis or testing for you. And I remember following up about like, how did the biopsy go?
Yeah. You know what they did to me?
Yeah.
So she gave me an opportunity to listen to any music I wanted as she cut 3 chunks of muscle out of my thigh, which to this day is still numb, by the way. And it is December. Tomorrow's December. Oh, wait. Are we supposed to be doing like date stamping?
It doesn't matter. I mean,
great.
You know, it's all relative. It's like we'll say 3 months later.
But, so 3 months later, my leg is still freaking numb, but I was so surprised. Thank God my mom had those 2 weeks off, because I was out of commission. Like, besides the painkillers that I was on for a few days because of the missing muscle, I was then on a 5-day aggressive steroid treatment and IV treatment at the hospital every single day.
Well, and I think what sometimes people don't realize is when there's a crisis like this in health and you're having to go, you know, people hear about it. They're happy that you're getting treated, doctor's appointments, but like, this is an interruption to your regular life too. So you still have the responsibility of maintaining your job, mothering, maintaining your home, feeding everyone, taking care of yourself. Like, we forget that is, you know, in contrast to this, it's a full-time job to be going to the hospital every day for IV treatment, you know, spending time traveling to the hospital, going for these biopsies, taking time to recover. Like,
I tried to like figure out like, what the time commitment was. And in September, I'm pretty sure I spent about 50 hours in medical treatment. So like in some capacity of like dealing with the doctor.
And for someone that's healthy, taking 50 hours out of their life for that month, and them still trying to keep their head above water for all the things that they're doing, getting kids to sports, getting kids to school. A healthy person would be drowning, let alone when you're not as mobile, when you're not feeling well. Like, it's just, it really, there's such a big impact on your life when you're going through something like this that I think sometimes, you know, it's not really thought about in a holistic way of how it doesn't just affect, you know, that immediate symptom. It affects everything.
Yeah. Oh, and then to like ice the entire cake of fun that was going on, my husband, Jesse, you know Jesse.
Yeah, I know Jesse.
Have you met? So Jesse was like in the craziest week of work ever. Like they had a year end and he could not come home. Like it was so stressful for him. Like I can only imagine, like as a wife or a partner, your job is to pick up the slack of your partner when they can't.
Yeah.
So not only was he 4.5 hours away, not being able to do anything, he had to rely on our circle. So like, thank God for my mother-in-law. Thank God for my mom, like my father, everybody was around us and like rallying and helping for this like period. But I honestly just think that it's easier to do things yourself. Like, I don't want to make sure that everybody is taking good care of my family. I want to be there for them. I want to, you know, help my wife with all of this.
Yeah. You want the tables to be turned where you're able to step up to support. It can be a lot harder receiving support for sure.
Absolutely. And on top of that, like he is in a very demanding career. He is doing something outside of his normal scope because he had recently had a promotion and like stress to the nines. I honestly am surprised he didn't have a mental breakdown that week because
and that's an aspect that I know we talk about too in other episodes, but you know, the role of the caregiver and sometimes how helpless they can feel. And the fact that this stress is also on them. You know, this is, it's a family issue. It's not just something you're dealing with. You know, it affects your kids. It affects your in-laws. It affects everyone in the circle. And everyone wants to be there and give and be their best. And then absolutely like just the extra stress of him trying to balance that pressure from his career too.
Totally. So, I think it was like day 4 or 5 that he got home.
And this is day 4 or 5 of the IV treatments, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So he got to come to one with me. And so my mom came to one, my father-in-law took me to one. Jess brought me to one. Maybe my mom brought me to 2. Anyways, and we get there and he's like sitting in pretty much in complete contradiction to myself. He doesn't like talking to anybody. Like there's people that go and sit in these chemo chairs and, you know, they put their earphones on. They're there for a few hours. They don't talk to anybody. I don't bring shit. Like I show up and I talk to everybody. Like I meet new people,
making friends, high-fiving.
Because, you know, if you're not an entrepreneur, any situation I have that people can't run away from me, I want to talk to them about my job.
Yeah. Networking, always networking.
Always be closing.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I actually quite enjoyed my time in there and I continue to, thank God, because I'm there all the time.
Yeah.
So we get through the treatment. I then have a PET scan on the horizon. But it's still a ways away. We then get a text message from the neurologist. Hey, Kassy, I'm curious. Do you ever eat any wild meat? Sorry, what?
I think it was specifically like cougar.
Yeah. She asked me, she's like, it could be cougar or bear or bison. I was like, oh, well, actually, I specifically remember before Christmas when I went on a trip with my friends, I had a bison carpaccio. Does raw bison trigger anything for you? So now she's sending me to an infectious disease specialist because I could have some kind of parasite. I could have some kind of infection or bacterial issue. And the whole thing now at this point is they've found a ton of inflammation in my muscles, but they found granulomas, which is like clusters of inflammation. So they're wondering what is causing your body for the blood cells to cluster like that and then attack the muscles. So there's lots of different things that can cause that. Parasites, infection, other autoimmune responses, lymphomas, cancers, different things like that. So they're trying to figure out what's causing these little pockets of inflammation. We go to the infectious disease specialist. He goes through everything, and he's not overly convinced that he's going to be the guy to like solve the mystery. But, you know, as somebody who loves food and loves trying new food, I love fine dining. We eat some weird shit. Like I said, bison carpaccio. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, venison, like different kinds of meats, like Hotel McDonald's. They make a great venison dish.
A lot of people where we live hunt. So we have we didn't eat meat for quite a few years, but, so many people here hunt. So it's like often bear or deer, like diff elk sausages, you know, there's a whole variety out there.
Exactly. And like, I had a very hard time pegging it back because I will try all of that. I love all of that kind of stuff. So I saw him, and then we are still kind of waiting. I did the IVIG treatment. I'm starting to feel better. The steroids were starting to kick in. I'm starting to get some mobility back. I noticed that, so one day I was out showing houses in Beaumont, and it was like 30 degrees, and it was so freaking hot in this house. I was so thirsty, but I didn't have the strength to open a bottle of water. So I stopped at the gas station, got a bottle of water, and I'm driving, and I cannot get this thing open. So I grabbed the bottle of water, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to open it with my teeth. But I had such like muscle restriction in my jaw, literally couldn't get the bottle in my mouth. So like, I just want this water. I'm just so thirsty right now. Can't get it. So I ended up like pulling over into a different gas station and asking somebody to open me a bottle of water.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah,
like,
ridiculous.
And 6 months earlier, you could not have ever even imagined being in that position.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, and then also another symptom that I started experiencing at this point was my hands. So now I'm like living the dream, but my fingers curled to the point that I literally could not straighten my fingers. Yeah. So I've been doing like a ton of physio, like you can see here. You can't hear my hands moving, but they are substantially better than they were. But they couldn't figure out why my hands were losing the mobility that they were as well. So I was doing a lot of acupuncture, seeing a naturopath, doing physio. I'm now on high dose steroids, and then it turned into like a morning steroid situation. So every morning I was taking 18 pills.
Yeah. It loaded me up.
8. Yeah. So
and also, can we just also talk about like there's these treatments, but there's still no diagnosis.
No.
So you're kind of blindly. Yeah.
They figured out that I had an autoimmune disease called myositis that was the active symptom, basically.
Okay.
So that is my muscles being attacked. Mm-hmm. But he referred to it as the fire. Mm. So they figured out that they need to stop the fire with the steroids, but they didn't know what started it. Yeah. So now the last couple of months has been trying to figure out what's causing the problem.
Yeah.
I eventually got my PET scan, and they were still super inconclusive. Now they're looking at things like lymphomas because they didn't know what they were seeing. I had 2 spots on my lungs that were showing up in the PET scan. Mm-hmm. One measured like 3 millimeters and one measured about 8 millimeters.
So the spots, were they just spots of inflammation, or were they, what were the spots?
Well, that's what they needed to figure out.
Okay.
So now I had to go see a pulmonary specialist. Once again, I got in there really quickly, freaking out again, because now, oh my God, I have a spot on my lung. I'm now being rushed into a pulmonary specialist. Like, what on earth could this be? And everyone's asking me, like, do you think it's from, like, smoking weed? No, I asked. She did not think that. So I go and see the pulmonary specialist, and she tells me that I need to get a biopsy of my lung. So
after your first biopsy experience was so great.
And I felt super prepared for it, you know. So I went and got the biopsy. So I had to get my mother-in-law to take me because little did I know that they were going to give me fentanyl that day. But I did know they were going to put me under.
Yeah.
They told me that the day before, like, you're going under anesthesia, so you will need someone to drive you home. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then sprinkle that, the morning of that, I had to put our dog down because...
Oh, yeah, bug. Oh.
Yeah, that was terrible. But it sucked. It really sucked.
Yeah.
Because I was so sick. He was so old, and he was peeing all over my house. And all I could think of is the amount of bacteria and potential parasite, like all of the filth that was in my house because of him.
Yeah.
Now I have this undiagnosed disease. Yeah. I have bacterias in my home. Like, he wasn't gone for 48 hours before the carpet was ripped out. Like, it was very hard. So put the dog down, head to the hospital so that I can go get put under myself. 2 drapers out one day.
Yeah.
Oh, but go and get it done. It wasn't so bad. I honestly, just like you kind of said with the leg biopsy, if I would have known what I was getting into, I probably would have like freaked myself out a little bit and kind of been in my head a little too much. But went there, got put under, had to, they basically went like in through my throat and then like into my lung. So this is now just before Thanksgiving. And I had like a good day to recover. The kids went to my mother-in-law's for a sleepover because I didn't know how long it was going to take me to like be up and at 'em. I didn't.
And this was on a Thursday from what I remember. And then
so
that weekend was Canadian Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So then we had talked Friday morning and I was a disaster because the only thing I heard from anybody was a very, very vague email. So we have this system where all of your test results. So anytime you get blood work done or anything, it goes right into your inbox and you get to see exactly like what all of your results are.
Yeah.
And they all are pretty standardized.
Yeah. Yeah, we have that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then I get this super vague email that just says leukemia lymphoma received in lab.
And it actually had in brackets final result, which is what
it did.
Which is what made, I mean, like so the day after your biopsy, and it was literally a document that it was typed out, exactly what you said, in brackets, final result, with the medical addressing on the top and on the bottom. And that was it.
That was it. No context.
That was it. No context whatsoever.
So I call my doctor. Weird. She doesn't answer the phone. And now we're on a long weekend.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And can we just talk about like with the, like, so leukemia, I believe is like blood or bone marrow cancer.
Blood, I believe.
Blood. Yeah. But just the idea that like, that this is now, you're receiving in your email something that says cancer pretty much.
Yeah.
Bracket, final result. Like, yeah. Yeah.
And nobody's answering their phone because it's a Friday afternoon on a long weekend. Let's take off.
Yeah.
So then Monday, I'm back on the phone trying to get anybody I can talk to because I still haven't received anything outside of like a few more test results for different things that they were looking at in the biopsy. And
Jesse was away this weekend too, correct?
Yeah, he was. So then every single one of my doctors took that week off.
Yeah, I remember. I was like, when are we going to hear back? Because now I'm completely invested in your journey.
Right. Right. Like, and my rheumatologist is gone. Yep. My neurologist is gone. My pulmonary specialist is gone. My GP is gone. Every single doctor is like off this week. So I have this stupid email and no conclusions. And I remember you checking in with me being like, how are you doing? I'm like, you know what? It's in the drawer. Like, I cannot even think about this. I will not acknowledge it. It is a problem for another day. Yeah.
Well, and there is truly like, it's so difficult, I think, especially when you're waiting on test results, you're waiting on diagnosis. this is the Google whirlpool too, you know, like there's all these things that are on the table. And if you get attached to any of them without without talking to a doctor, like it can, well, number one, drive you mad because all the worrying that goes into it, but also it's kind of like you're almost worrying about something that you don't actually know.
No,
so
it's completely consuming.
It's consuming. But I think, like you said, like you're like, no, I tucked it in the drawer, and it's like the drawer is closed for the weekend. Like, yeah, like
I'm not dealing
with it. Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about it later.
Which I think was probably the best thing you could have done. Yeah.
Yeah.
In hindsight. But like, you don't have hindsight when you're in the moment. Yeah.
No, you just have unknowns, like unknown after unknown. So then Jesse comes home and I like share with him about this email, and like we're talking about it. And obviously like there's a lot of emotions that come into play because now he's finding out like, okay, wait, what? Like, why is nobody talking to us about this? Like, how have we had no conversations?
Well, and we've had a lot of conversations, you and I, about how inappropriate that type of document, like, because it truly,
yeah,
like there's really one way to interpret it, like out of context. So yeah, it just, how inappropriate that you had that without any follow-up. I mean, that's a broken piece of the system right there. Let's just say that.
I get more information sent that is coming into my inbox once again without any context, that is saying that the sample that they used was unusable. Mm-hmm. So the biopsy that they took was not good enough, basically. So pretty inconclusive there. They then referred my case to a panel of specialists. So now they're looking for a sarcoidosis panel, because sarcoidosis can cause the myositis.
And what is that again? Or no, not the myositis, but the
sarcoidosis. Mostly it starts with your lungs. So the reason they never went there in the first place is because I wasn't having any issues with my lungs, or so I thought. Mm-hmm. But then I go and see a pulmonary specialist, and they're telling me, oh, you actually are like operating at like an 80% lung capacity. Mm-hmm. And I kind of thought like, really? Mm-hmm. I thought I was fine. Like, yeah, I'm not a runner, so I wouldn't notice if, you know, my mile was taking longer, or I don't even know. What do your lungs do? You have a harder time running that mile?
Yeah,
like
maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge a judgment on your lung capacity. Like maybe a swimmer, or like a synchronized swimmer who has to hold their breath. I don't know.
I don't get my hair wet, so also don't do that. You know, so we didn't have a baseline to kind of compare that to. So they said, okay, well, we have this panel of specialists that meet every month from around the province. We are going to be presenting your case, and hopefully, you know, we can put enough eyes on it that somebody might have an idea of what's going on.
And then just interrupt. At this point, what was their response to you about the, like the lymphoma piece?
Oh, yeah. So they ended up saying that they didn't think that's what it was.
Okay.
Thank God. But I'm not going to forget that phone call, actually. It was pretty funny. She called me, and I was loading a piece of carpet into the back seat of my vehicle because I had now found the carpet to replace the dog pee carpet.
Oh, no.
And because I'm cheap, I got like a roll end. So, it's not like easy, like you open the door, the carpet guy comes. Like, no, I had to go find the carpet myself, source it myself, load it myself, because, saving $200 is that important. And she goes, so how are you feeling after your procedure? And I asked her, I said, sorry, did you do something that should have improved my quality of life? I'm not exactly sure why you're asking me this.
Yeah.
I think in that moment, she had a pretty good understanding of my level of frustration.
Yeah.
And I wasn't very nice about it. Like, I was pissed. Like,
well, this is also after like months of like inconclusive testing, biopsies the tissue samples aren't good enough. Yeah. Getting inappropriate emails that leave you like hanging, like this comes to a point like of frustration that like, look at the life change from months before where you were living a normal life. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what I could say is that I was feeling better because the steroids had done their jobs.
Yeah.
Like they were putting the fire out. I was up and at a carpet store making somebody load something in my car. Oh, I wasn't loading shit. The guy was loading. I had a guy. But I got to the guy and that's all it took. Like I was like, look at how good I'm doing.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation about how this is going to the panel and ... Things have really slowed down since then. So prognosis wise, the panel met and they don't think that's what it is. So, I mean, that's great because I don't want to have a disease that attacks my internal organs. Like that's not it.
Yeah.
I was really hoping it was going to be a parasite. Like,
yeah,
man,
I know, me too.
If I could have just taken a pill and killed some parasite that I consumed in some wild meat, everything go away, that's great. That's best case scenario. Yeah. But that wasn't it either. Mm-hmm. So my neurologist has continued to like keep me on treatments. So every month I go for 4 days of IV treatment. So that's really fun. I love those days. I'm on methotrexate, which is a weekly injection in my kitchen. I'm on steroids and that shit is fucking me up. Like, oh my God. I have lost so much hair. Like you can't see right now, but we'll get to this in another episode about how I cry every day I shower because of the amount of hair I lose.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just super inconclusive at this point. So we're going to continue to treat the symptoms with the unknown cause. And yeah, I don't think I've missed anything about this end part.
I mean, it's still inconclusive. Like it's after all of that testing. And I mean, the crazy thing is, I think this is an experience that a lot of women especially because of hormones and having kids and different triggers and, you know, things in our bodies that like, that go through this period of like no diagnosis. Like it's just, which this day and age seems so bonkers.
I know, right?
Like bonkers.
Well, they always just chalk everything up to like, oh, you're a woman or your hormones or, you know, it doesn't matter what. You could go in with a freaking like axe in your arm and they'd be like, and when was your last period?
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God,
you know?
totally.
Yeah. Just everything gets kind of pushed off into women's reproductive systems. And like, let's face it, there's so many other things that go on.
I think the reason why, when I'm saying like women too seem to be in this position a lot more often is also because women's health, I don't think has been studied to the depths that it could be in the Western medicine world. Yeah. Like it's like women get a period, but like, I don't think the in-depth true nature has really been embraced by Western medicine. So then you're looking at this situation where there's still a really big gap of understanding and knowledge that goes into how a female body actually even works.
Like we have different organs than men.
Yeah.
And
and our
we have completely different bodies, but yet it's treated as if it's one commonality, right?
Yeah,
like it's,
exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's the same male or female. Like, yeah. So, I mean, but this experience of drawn out months and months of testing and treatments without diagnosis, I think is unfortunately becoming more and more common, like very common within that autoimmune world. Yeah. Within like this type of like symptom and 100%, I can imagine
it's a lonely place to be.
A lot of people going through it by themselves. Absolutely.
And that, like I said, it's a lonely place to be. Like I remember, and I'm so lucky that I have you, like in particular. I know that we've talked a lot more about this since, you know, everything's kind of gone down, but like mourning the loss of the life that I had, like even in the fall, we sat on the phone and literally I was just crying because I could not take my kids for a walk to see all of the different like leaves changing. And that's who I am, like in my core, and like who
That's
I
what
want to
brings
be
you
as
joy.
a mom.
Yeah.
I want to be breathing in that fresh air and, you know, watching the leaves change and taking pictures of the mushrooms. And, you know, like I want my kids to have that as like their core memories. And it was just one of those things that was so off the table. Our best summer ever, as I called it, sucked because we have a park that's maybe, I don't know, 200 yards from our house, not even. Went there twice. Like we just, it
just wasn't accessible. Yeah.
It wasn't. And I had a lot of head trash about that. Like it was very hard for me to accept the fact that, you know, we're getting people to come in and help with things that are normally my job, or, you know, I'm asking people to take my kids so that they can go to the park, or can you take them so that they can go to this amusement park? Or
they're living the experience that you want to be having with them.
Yeah. Like I got the flu and I was like, no, take the kids to the lake because I want them to have this memory of going to the lake with their friends. Like it was so hard for me to ask for the help and put my kids first and figure out how they can still have, you know, as normal of an experience as possible while I'm going through all of this crap. And as like my prognosis and everything was kind of going on, people are kind of coming into my DMs with like the most genuine of intentions, being like, what's going on with you? Like, I've noticed that you've been getting this, or what is it? And they want me to like be able to give them these answers, or how can they help?
It would almost sometimes be easier if you had an answer to give them.
But
like,
I don't.
Yeah. And it's still like, it's what's going on. We don't know. Like people don't know how to hold that like space for that almost. Like they want something that's going to give them an explanation and then maybe like an idea of what they can do. Like it's just something that I think there's this place that you move into a different perspective when you're going through health issues. And then you take that even down to a more specific, like as a mom, and it really changes your perspective on things. And like you said, like it can be really, really isolating. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because, well, not funny, but like, as this has all been going on, you know, I've connected with a few other people. Like there's a realtor from my former office that reached out to me, and she was going through a breast cancer battle.
Yeah.
Another really good friend of mine just got diagnosed with MS. Yeah. And like, because they knew I was going through something, most people don't know what I'm going through, but because they knew that some shit was hitting the fan, they felt comfortable enough to talk to me about their problems. Yeah. And like, I'm not saying that I think everybody should, you know, slide into the DMs and like talk about, but you know what?
But like, there's a need for community.
There is. And having the ability to just know that somebody else is going through it. Like we always joke, oh, today I gave, you know, 10 vials of blood. How many is the most you've ever given? And, you know, drink lots of water. It'll make it come out faster. Like,
tips on how to prepare for what to wear to a CT scan.
Like, oh, yeah. I could totally do a blog post on that. Like, hey, these are my 3 favorite sweaters for IV treatment.
You might be allowed to keep your underwear on if it doesn't have like, 100%.
Yeah. I've acquired a lot more arm hair lately, so I will. Yeah, actually, I've acquired a lot of hair other places, including my nose. I had no idea.
The steroids?
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Well,
loosening it up here,
some, gaining it,
getting it everywhere.
Yeah.
I had to wax my mustache for the first time in my life. Never have I done that before.
Oh, really? Well, but these are things that, like, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this on another episode, but like, hair loss, like body hair growth in other places you don't want it. Like these are things that they hit you at a different level. Like it's like as a woman, as like, you know, it's like that shit's hard, but this shit is fucking hard, right?
I know that like you can't really tell because you don't know what I look like.
Well, you've been so well groomed lately.
I know. I've been taking my care of myself because I can brush my own hair again.
Yeah.
You know, there was a time in the fall where I was literally going to the hairdressers to have them wash my hair because I couldn't handle looking like a bag of shit anymore. Like wasn't able to properly wash my hair.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to show houses still. Life was still moving, but there was nothing that made me feel worse than looking not myself.
Yeah.
So especially like as I've been on these drugs now for 4 months.
Yeah.
They've like my face is totally rounded out. I got moon face, which I did not want. I was well aware that it was a side effect and it was something I was not interested in. And here we are with my big old chubby face.
Oh, it's cute.
Extra arm hair.
Yeah.
The irritability.
Mm. Well, I hear like you were saying like the Prednisone, it almost gets you like fiery, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's
like layering symptoms with like then symptoms of your meds.
Yeah. So there's a perfect example. When I first started my prednisone, I didn't really like think I was going to have any side effects. Like I'd done everything and met and exceeded all expectations. Like my doctors were all telling me, like her exact words were, what I see in front of me and what your chart shows is very different.
See,
like
this
you
is
are
the
doing
invisible disease because
you are doing so well.
Yeah.
And I told this to Jessie with so much pride. I was like, my doctor says that I am like crushing it. Like she's so proud of how well I'm doing. And like, sure, a lot of it comes into like the headspace side of it. But he looks at me and he's like, what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, how bad is it? I was like, oh, well, when you say it like that, I don't know.
Yeah. That's it. Like, well, that's even with the transplant, like the reason they moved me to transplant is because of my CTs and the progression on my CTs. I mean, it's not because of progression looking at me.
No.
You know, it's like, or energy has slipped, and pain level, but that's stuff I'm always dealing with. But it was like the inside. And I'm like, oh, I mean, the inside. So
it's worse than I feel. Yeah, exactly. So having them say that, like I took it as a great compliment. Yeah. But then it just makes you like worried, like, okay, well, what am I not looking? So then you start Googling things again. Oh. It's just this like vicious cycle.
Yeah.
That never, ever ends. And hopefully we can come up with a diagnosis soon because I'm sick of Googling.
Yeah. Yeah. So for kind of rounding this out, where you're at today, I mean, we kind of talked about this mindset, the brain space, the hope for future and what that looks like for you right now. I guess talking about like diagnosis or returning back to like normal. How do you feel about that? And like, what does that look like for you at this point? Like having been through the last, 6 months of cray, where are you at?
Well, it's hard to say because I think that one of the things that I've been very diligent about is keeping myself in check mentally.
Yes, you've done a great job.
Staying positive and, the word at least comes out a lot. At least it's not this. At least it's not that. It's
your nature though. I mean, I can't imagine someone dealing with what you're doing that like this is your nature. Your nature is so lighthearted, sarcastic, fun, funny, looking at the positive side of things. Like not everybody is like that naturally. So, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. No, it's true though. Like you have to like keep it in check and everything has been so freaking out of control. Like I never know what's coming one day to the next. I never know if I have a treatment coming. I don't we never know what's really going on. But the only thing I have been able to control is how I deal with it, how I talk about it, how I try and like make it better for my kids, knowing, and just staying positive, staying surrounded by people that keep me uplifted and in the right headspace, because it can be pretty hard to be in a place where you just read 4 pages of Google things, or you get an email that throws you off, or you get like, it doesn't take a lot to trigger you into a negative space, but it is a lot harder to climb out of that hole. But I think like just surrounding myself with like the best people possible and, you know, not being afraid to ask for help when I need it is probably the most important part of it.
And for further, anything that's on the radar right now, moving you forward to a diagnosis, or that you know
I
of?
have a scan coming up in January, and there they are hoping to see that the spots in my lungs have cleared up, but also if there's still any active inflammation, or what's going on with that. But I will say I've been watching my blood work, and I can see like on the graph chart, like where the inflammation is. And that is like totally in check right now. Good. Hence why I'm feeling so much better. But now I'm just terrified of like the next steps. Like what happens when I come off of these meds? Like I went so fast, so downhill when I did that like quickie on them in the summertime. Yeah. Is that going to happen again? I don't know. Yeah. And I'm freaking out a little bit about it, even though I know that's like a couple months down the road. It's just like one more thing to look forward to. Yeah. And by look forward to, I mean dread.
Well, yeah.
So that's my story. I mean, it's so interesting because I know that I've been worried about sharing my story. You've shared your story, and we've kind of talked about how hard it is for us to share it because we don't want to be viewed any lesser than or pitied or
like you're broken or not capable is something I heard you say earlier, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like, it's interesting now that this is going to be out into the world and everybody's going to know our shit. And
it's freeing. I promise you, it's freeing because you don't have, you're not hiding anything.
It's true.
You know, it's just come as you are. And I think there is some empowerment to that. So,
I mean, I'm not wearing pants right now, so I should probably don't come as you are. No, it's all good. But one thing that I'm very excited to dive into is our Facebook group.
Yes. Yeah, so 100%.
We have started a Facebook group for anybody who wants to take some of our conversations offline. I am so excited to hear a little bit about your journey. Jenny and I also like to overshare as well. So if you're looking to connect with us,
if you want to overshare too. But I think there is something to being able to relate, even if it's not to the exact things, but to relate to someone else that is moving through the struggle, that is living it, that's balancing work, parenting, you know, money, households, all the things, while dealing with chronic illness and the time. Like your story really has just shown how many hours you have put into this in such a condensed period of time. Like how consuming it can feel and isolating. And I'm really excited just to hear, you know, from people that connect with that and giving them a safe space to share themselves.
Totally. Well, thanks for having me on our own podcast.
On our own podcast.
Hey mamas, we see you. And we want you to join our Facebook community where we can connect and continue the conversation.
Join our private Facebook group at My Invisible Disease, because no one should go through this alone.
Thank you for listening, and check us out at myinvisibledisease.com.